this is going to be something that a lot of people are asking for and a lot of people are willing to pay for. And at the end of the day, the clinic makes the same amount of money if you get side effects or not. You're still buying the drug. And once you start the treatment, you're dependent on it whether it's going well for you or not. So a lot of these clinics are not incentivized to run the full gamut of comprehensive testing. Okay, hello everyone. Again, welcome to another one of my solo podcast episodes here at Victory Men's Health, which in my humble opinion is by far the best TRT and hormone optimization clinic in the US. And if you are looking for actually getting your hormone replacement therapy done properly, which is something that shouldn't be as difficult as it is, but I wouldn't be here making these episodes every week if it was something that was actually done properly at the standard clinic, then you should definitely get in touch with them if you're in the United States. I'm going to be doing a part 2 here for my troubleshooting TRT recap, which was already a retrospective video anyway. But as I said in part 1, the reason why I'm doing this is that I think there are two camps of people when we're looking at the majority of the searches on the internet for TRT. There's people who are looking to get into TRT, people who are learning about it for the first time, understanding the basics. And then there are people who are troubleshooting things that are going wrong. Now, obviously, there are other camps of people who are looking to optimize, people who are looking to research more, all that kind of thing. But for the most part, at least according to Gemini, when I asked Gemini the other week, and from my general understanding of the space, which I've been in now for a long time, most people are looking to either learn the basics or troubleshoot. So a few years ago, I recorded a troubleshooting TRT lecture where I went through what I would consider the most common avatars, not the movie, but the profiles of the people who were looking to troubleshoot TRT. And in November last year, I went back and revisited this, one, because the audio quality was absolutely horrendous. But number two, I had a lot to add because I'd worked with thousands and thousands of additional clients in the time since in my role working clinic side in Australia. And I had more to elaborate on and share in terms of, for people who work in any kind of data or work in any kind of, service industry, trends become more apparent at scale. So it was good to be able to come back and give a bit more insight on these topics. In part 2 today, I want to talk about what I think is probably the most common troubleshooting issue, which I've spoken about many times, but I really want to speak about it in the context of troubleshooting, which is covered at the very end of the troubleshooting lecture on my YouTube channel, which is, pardon my French, shitty protocols. And bad TRT protocols are probably the number one cause of TRT issues because it's simply TRT being done wrong. And it's that simple. Testosterone is very, very beneficial for men. It's also very beneficial for women in the right dose. But testosterone, and I've said this before, and I don't mean to kick things off by sounding esoteric and woo-woo, but I don't really have a better way of putting it. Testosterone is literally a man's life force. And when I say life force literally, because it's a woo-woo kind of term, if we look at it from a scientific context, testosterone is kind of like a marionette, a puppet master of a lot of really important biological systems that both impact how you function as a human organism in terms of breaking down, repair, preventing against catabolism and aging in a relatively graceful manner, but also subjectively how you feel and ultimately how you experience life. And one thing I've said in a couple of my lectures that I've done at the Silverback Summit is that when we're looking at things from a really surface level, if we're really wanting to get like an umbrella macro perspective of why we're here, and when I say here, I mean, pursuing TRT or hormone replacement therapy in general, ultimately what we're trying to do is improve our subjective experience of being alive. We're trying to make our time on this earth better, or potentially longer and better, by having a better experience of being a human, feeling better, being able to do more, being able to recover better. I think if people can go through the day with more energy, feel better mentally, maybe not have the voice inside your head constantly hating you and berating you and trying to break you down, and then maybe at the end of the day, laying down and closing your eyes and having your mind switch off, being able to fall asleep and wake up the next day feeling refreshed, that sounds like it would be pretty sweet. And I think that as a foundation would set people up to be able to have an enjoyable and maybe even a productive and meaningful life. You know, having a family, having a career, accomplishing something, maybe leaving some form of legacy, as opposed to going through life feeling like a miserable sack of potatoes that's stressed by every little thing that goes on around them and feeling like you're constantly behind the eight ball, never able to, let alone get ahead, but even just tread water in life. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that. And I've spoken to a lot of people who really feel that way. And TRT can often come across or be marketed or be pitched as this magic bullet panacea to turn the latter into the former. And in the right context, it can. And a lot of the things that are required, which I've covered in other videos, are the importance of good daily habits, living well, actually being a healthy human, and living in a way that would ideally, and this is to help people understand this from an educational perspective, is create the body and live the life as a human that if your endocrine system were to be functioning properly, you would be making the levels of testosterone that you are injecting. And that's I guess, the secret sauce to optimizing a testosterone protocol from a patient standpoint is to live healthy diet and lifestyle habits that would produce the testosterone levels that you are taking or that you're trying to optimize to if the system was working properly. There's a lot of really good, one, I guess, mechanistic theory and rationale, but two, also just real world examples where if you speak to people who practice in this field, they'll go, yep, that tends to really help. And it's because if you are living in a way that you are priming your body to be producing the testosterone levels that you are now administering exogenously, it means that your body would be set up to be producing the right enzymes and the right metabolic pathways and the right receptor expression to make these androgens work properly. Otherwise, the analogy that I've used in the past, probably to death at this point, is it's kind of like either taking a sports car and putting in a driver who's barely even learnt the basics of operating a vehicle. That's not going to end well. Or taking a Ferrari engine and putting it into a beat up old Suzuki Swift that needs a service. This disconnect causes problematic outcomes. But today I don't want to really talk about too much the patient standpoint. I can cover that and rehash that in another video where we talk about the importance of positive daily or weekly habits. And a spoiler for that is that it's equally important to do the things you know you should be doing and to not do the things that you know you shouldn't be doing. And if you are not sure what those things are or what the priorities of those should be, I will be redoing my complete guide to that coming out very shortly on YouTube. But at the moment, it is available on the TRT and Hormone Optimization channel. It is called Your Brain on Testosterone and the War on Masculinity Part 2. But without further ado, I want to get into how clinics, how providers, how doctors, how bodybuilding coaches, and whoever else is instructing people on how to do TRT these days gets it wrong. And I've seen a huge amount of people online have negative outcomes from TRT. They might be in a situation where they solve some problems, but they create other problems. Or maybe they solve one and create two more problems, or they solve two problems and create one problem. But they end up in a situation where they're either about the same as before they started, maybe just different. They are doing slightly better than before they started, but with major drawbacks. Or if they're particularly unlucky, they're doing terribly. And testosterone is not to blame because testosterone is a core part of your male operating system. Testosterone is very good for you. I mean, if you take an absurd amount, you could argue that that's probably not good for you. But within the context of hormone optimization, testosterone is good for you. The problem is that if it's administered incorrectly, this causes potentially more harm than good or a bunch of side effects. And part of the reason for this is that one of the unfortunate drawbacks about testosterone replacement therapy is that we are actually shutting down the body's natural production. And this is a system called negative feedback. When you administer testosterone externally, exogenously, your body senses that there is an abundance of testosterone. This happens in the hypothalamus of the brain. And as a result, it sends a signal to the pituitary gland, which is what signals the endocrine producing organs in your body, the glands that produce hormones, to say, hey, plenty of testosterone here. You guys can, chill out. Testicles, you can maybe have a bit of a nap or go on a little holiday. And you don't need to continue to make testosterone because there's plenty here. And this is definitely not ideal. It is a lesser evil than being hypogonadal. Absolutely, the juice is worth the squeeze. But there's nothing optimal about this. This is part of the drawbacks of testosterone replacement therapy, because if testosterone replacement therapy was perfect, you wouldn't need it. You just have optimal testosterone levels naturally. So any medical intervention is always going to be imperfect to some degree. A surgery is not optimal. There are better surgeries, there are worse surgeries. A surgery can go well, but the most optimal scenario is to not need the surgery in the first place. So when it comes to testosterone replacement therapy, because we are shutting down the body's natural production, we are hijacking a system in the body which is usually very heavily regulated. It is governed by a variety of processes, including the circadian rhythm, so the rhythm of daily hormone production, as well as a variety of inducing and suppressing mechanisms. If you go out and drink a bunch of alcohol, eat a bunch of garbage food, and maybe don't sleep too well that night, your testosterone production is going to be impaired. If you eat really healthy food and sleep well and spend some time in the sun and do some exercise and look after yourself well, your testosterone production will increase. And this is because your body is constantly in this push and pull between survival and reproducing. So the hormone system is very heavily governed by a whole bunch of stuff. And when we hijack this system, the governance of that whole bunch of stuff now falls by the wayside. And you can pitch this as being good or pitch this as being bad. You can say, well, now it doesn't really matter how I look after myself because I can always be producing optimal testosterone levels, so I can go do whatever I like and have a good time on the weekends and, kind of eat what I want as long as I fit my macros, and I'm going to have stellar testosterone levels no matter what. I don't have to look after myself anymore. If that was the case, that would make my job easier and probably everyone else's job a lot easier, but that's not how the body works. Believe it or not, there are other important health promoting processes other than making testosterone. But the part that's more complex with this is that push and pull system is dynamic, it's fluid. And not only are we replacing this with something that is now static, but depending on how the testosterone is administered, we could now be creating rhythms and peaks and troughs or roller coasters or whatever you want to call it, that not only don't respond to the natural ebbs and flows of the hormone production, but now follow a very different rhythm, which, depending on your injection frequency or route of administration, might be now a bi-weekly cycle, or God forbid, a weekly cycle, or a 48-hour cycle. And there could be these significant peaks and troughs which don't really align with the natural fluctuations and the natural magnitudes of your natural hormone production. So now you could be throwing your body out of alignment, but still having better testosterone levels than you would have had in the first place, which is why we often end up in a scenario where we solve some problems, but we create more. We end up feeling better than we felt before we started treatment, better than we felt having terrible testosterone levels, the levels of a geriatric old woman. But because there is now a disconnect between the body's biological systems and the testosterone that you're administering, things might feel like they're a little bit out of whack. And that's because they are. And you're inhabiting and living through this process. So when it comes to hijacking and replacing and hopefully optimizing your body's primary life force, your primary sex hormone, testosterone, it's something that you really want to have the person who's steering that ship know what they're doing. Hopefully they've done it a bunch before with good outcomes, but can be able to cater and customize and optimize the protocol based on where you're at now. Because part of working in any form of health intervention, medical intervention, whether you're a doctor or whether you're a personal trainer or a physiotherapist or nutritionist or whatever, is compliance is a science, and you have to meet people where they're at. And idealistically, when everyone starts testosterone treatment, they would walk out of the doctor's office, they would go to the grocery store and they would buy only healthy groceries. They would consistently work out and sleep properly and manage their stress and not drink any alcohol and live a perfect lifestyle. That would be great. That's not going to happen, but it would be great. a lot of the time people will be working towards being this better version of themselves, but because they've been low testosterone and felt like garbage for a long time, their external habits reflect their internal state, meaning that they may need the testosterone therapy to help them get on track. And in order to get on track, they need to have a protocol that in the interim is going to help them manage their symptoms, but also have room for improvement as they improve themselves. So starting with a testosterone therapy protocol that is double the top of the reference range, which is representative of a healthy 19-year-old who's living every possible facet of their life perfectly. If you're a metabolic syndrome, obese, alcoholic, 65-year-old man is probably not going to give you a good outcome. That's kind of to be expected. But yet, men are walking into testosterone clinics every day, being given these protocols and walking out with problems. And then they're coming back to their provider with side effects and just being told, oh, you're too hard. This is too difficult. Or let's adjust the testosterone dose and this will solve everything. And when we're looking at a protocol for hormone replacement therapy, it's not just this is your injection frequency or this is your topical cream dose protocol. The protocol is for everything, because your endocrine system and the outcomes of testosterone therapy, when you're looking to get the results of TRT, the result that you're hoping to achieve is not just an elevated number on paper. It's what that elevated number on paper is going to do for you. And the problem is that what that number on paper is going to do for you is also impacted by all these other aspects of your life. So your protocol can't just extend to take this many injections of this many milligrams per week and then you have all your expectations met and you'll feel fantastic. It's about saying, here is a protocol to start with, but here are a bunch of other really important things that you need to address in your life so that we can titrate up your testosterone dose over time to get the optimal result for you. But we can also titrate up your habits and titrate up your overall health so that we can get you to being the person that you're ultimately hoping to be, because testosterone is not the only lever that we can pull in human biology. Yet a lot of these TRT clinics are going, oh, well, let's just take this one lever and just pull and tweak this and move this around, and this is going to be the ultimate decider of everything to do with this gentleman's life. And it's not the case. If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below. So if someone is off track to begin with, their protocol often needs to be a little bit more sensitive. It needs to be a little bit more catered towards where they are metabolically. And this is because metabolic health is one of the main drivers of how testosterone metabolizes, as well as how testosterone and estrogen receptors are present or up/down regulated in the body. So if you are someone who is obese or even morbidly obese, someone who is drinking too much alcohol, maybe someone who's even developed some fatty liver disease from having untreated metabolic syndrome for a majority period of their adult life, testosterone replacement therapy might be a bit of a bumpy ride if you just start with a typical protocol for age-related hormone decline, because you don't have age-related hormone decline. You have suppression of your endocrine system and likely permanent damage from prolonged metabolic syndrome. This is a relatively new phenomenon. This is not something that happened in the 70s and 80s. People weren't morbidly obese for 30, 40 years. This wasn't a thing. This is a new thing. So we need to treat men with where they're at, and we need to understand how these things work a little bit differently. So the stuff I talk about in the troubleshooting lecture is that if you are someone who is obese, or if you are someone who is insulin resistant, starting testosterone with the conjunction of metformin to help to manage the insulin resistance is going to be very important for how those hormones metabolize. But another option, rather than using a pharmaceutical medication, which I would hope is always going to be the supplement to diet and exercise interventions, which are the primary key here, is you can instead use a testosterone cream, which the Victory Men's Health team affectionately refer to as ball butter, which I think is a great term. The reason why this works so well is that when someone is obese, not only do they have an increased conversion of testosterone to estradiol, which is actually protective, it's not the devil. The problem is that they have a downward expression, they have a suppression of 5-alpha reductase, which is responsible for producing DHT, dihydrotestosterone. When men start testosterone, they typically want to get an androgenic effect. They want to get a more masculinizing effect of their hormonal system. They want to go through life feeling more like a man. And DHT is one of the primary drivers for this. So when someone converts more testosterone into estrogen and less into DHT, the solution isn't simply to block the aromatase expression, because if you do that, you block the thing that the body is upregulating to protect your heart, but you're also not addressing the fact that you have a downregulated expression of the thing that you typically want the outcome of. But when you use a testosterone cream and you apply it to a shaved scrotum instead of injecting it, you're actually able to have more exposure to the 5-alpha reductase enzyme present in the scrotal skin, estimated to be about 8 times higher, and therefore you're able to get a hormonal profile that is more representative of a lean, healthy young man. And therefore you're more likely going to get the results of a lean, healthy young man. And you might say, well, I don't want to put testosterone cream on my balls. I want to inject it. Lose some body fat and then change the protocol over so you don't have side effects. The other thing that's really important to look at is high frequency of injections. And I've seen people on the internet come up with every possible BS reason for why less injection frequency is more optimal. And I think a lot of people just don't want to be able to come to the party and say, hey, there's actually better information here now and I was wrong. They would rather die on the hill of the information that they want to stick to protect the fact that they actually need to learn more about how pharmacokinetics work. And I would love to debate anyone on the topic. I really would. My inbox is open to anyone who can come up with a logical and rational reason why injecting less often is ever going to be more optimal for anything other than convenience. Would love to hear from you. Dave@advancedfundamentalhealth.com. But until that day comes when someone can prove me wrong, more frequent injections are always going to be better. If we want to stabilize the concentration of any drug, we re-administer the drug at the peak. This is pharmacokinetics 101. So it is more important if someone is metabolically unhealthy to have that stability. It's important anyway, but it's even more important to have less of a cadence between these peaks and these troughs, because that produces more stability of the metabolites. And it is more stability in the metabolites of testosterone, estradiol, and DHT, which lead to better outcomes from treatment, especially over time. Plus, the other thing that is problematic is that these fluctuations in how people are experiencing the testosterone levels in their serum, it's not just about the serum level of the testosterone, it's the direction that it's moving. Caffeine's a really good example. Caffeine's got a half-life of 8 hours. So if the serum concentration is the same at 30 minutes as it is after it goes down the peak, let's say at 2 or 3 hours, are you feeling the same stimulatory effect? No, because one is on the incline and one is on the decline. And this impacts how people feel when they take exogenous substances of any form, and hormones are the same. So stability is extremely important if your internal health is not stable. That's another thing that impacts the outcomes massively. And if people don't want to do daily injections, or they're not willing to apply a testosterone cream twice a day, and they're unhealthy, sounds like we're dealing with a discipline issue, because that sounds like an issue that has permeated into multiple aspects of their life already, which is why they're in this scenario to begin with. But the other thing that's really important on top of this is not just getting the dose right and the frequency right and the route of administration right, and catering the dose or the frequency to the individual in terms of where they need to be to get the result that they need to get, is getting comprehensive testing done. A comprehensive blood test is only useful in the hands of someone who knows how to interpret. And this is something which is becoming more and more of a problem because as more and more TRT clinics are popping up, we've got more and more people who are interpreting these results and simply running a basic CBC and a total testosterone count and basically ticking a box to say, can I legally sell you testosterone? And most of the time, given the metabolic state of the United States, the answer is going to be yes. And given that testosterone is extremely marketable to men, this is going to be something that a lot of people are asking for and a lot of people are willing to pay for. And at the end of the day, the clinic makes the same amount of money if you get side effects or not. You're still buying the drug. And once you start the treatment, you're dependent on it whether it's going well for you or not. So a lot of these clinics are not incentivized to run the full gamut of comprehensive testing. A lot of the time, patients don't want to pay for more comprehensive testing. They don't want to pay to spend the time with the specialist to actually interpret their results, but they want the outcome as if they did. So this is where it's important that patients also have the ability to discern which provider is going to be able to get them the best outcome. And it's going to be the provider that's going to be assessing for all aspects of your metabolic health, all aspects of your endocrine system, because you might need to support your DHEA, you might need to support your thyroid, you might need to intervene with your liver health, you might need to have your HbA1c and your fasting insulin assessed so that someone can actually properly intervene for metabolic syndrome in conjunction with supporting your endocrine system. And it might not just be as straightforward as doing a 1 ml shot of testosterone every week that the clinic on the corner wants to sell you. So if you're wanting to get your testosterone therapy done right, if you're wanting to have the outcome that you're probably hoping to achieve, don't do it by half measures. Don't end up going to some crappy provider and then having to go to a good provider after the fact to fix the problem. A good provider can see around the corner and prevent the issue from coming up. And I've said this for a long time, and I stand by this as someone who troubleshoots these cases almost every day. A good provider can prevent or resolve any problem that comes up with TRT. It's completely a skill issue. So I hope that helped. I hope you found that insightful, and I'll see you guys all on the next one. Many of the side effects that they experience when correcting this are due to the biological consequences of chronic inflammation. It's important to support and adjust the TRT and supplement protocol for the patient in terms of where they're at now based on their different state of health at baseline. Daily injections actually do lead to a natural slight fluctuation in levels because of these pharmacokinetic peaks. So just like caffeine has a half-life of 8 hours, it doesn't have a gradual increase of up to 4 hours and then a gradual decrease in the desired effects.